Please, big Disney welcome to moderator for the evening, Justin Arthur from D23.
Hey, we have the TRON fans out here. Thank you. All right. Well, we're really excited. When we saw at D23 that it was the 40th anniversary of TRON, we wanted to throw a dance party. We wanted to do all kinds of things, and I'm thankful that it's now become pretty much the summer of TRON for us. So thank you to the LCAP for having us here to celebrate this amazing movie. Are any of you coming to the D23 Expo? Alright, well, don't miss it. We have a completely different panel that we're putting together for that to celebrate 40 years of TRON as well. So don't miss it. It's on Sunday of the Expo. Anyway, I should get to the more interesting people. So please help me welcome somebody who worked on the original TRON as a publicist, wrote the book The Art of TRON, and will be helping me moderate today. So everybody welcome Mike Bonifer.
So it is a great honor for me to be here with friends and colleagues from 40 years, and thank you for your 40 years of enjoyment and appreciation of this film. Let's introduce the panel. First, the effects animation designer for TRON, John Van Vliet. They wouldn't let us call this next guy a computer animator, so his credit on the film, in addition to production storyboards, was computer image choreographer, Jerry Reese. Executive producer of TRON Legacy, Donald Kushner. Thank you, everybody. And my first question. We got, between the four of us, we have about 160 years of history of that. So we're going to cover 160 years in 10 minutes. We're going to tell you what's happened. We're going to each pick out a little highlight from the last 40 years. I'll go first. So this was me doing bad improv on the set of TRON. I was the publicist, the author of The Art of TRON. I wrote a book. TRON was such an amazing improvisation. It set a standard for me for how businesses should innovate. So I wrote a book called Game Changers, Improvisation for Business in the Network World, and occasionally I spoke and did workshops around the world. People would give me TRON discs. I would not accept the TRON disc like this. I had to accept it in the official TRON way. So I would take it like that. And my son, both my sons picked up on Adam Bonifer, who works at CBS, is a fantastic improviser in business. My younger son, Alex, and I did improv together. You can't even tell us apart there, a group called Bon Bon, a two-person show. And he is in the main company of the Groundlings, and he's also the star of Kevin Can F himself, second season, August 22nd on AMC. Be sure to catch it. So that's me. Jerry Reese, what's been going on for 40 years?
40 years. Well, I had the most creative freedom I've ever had in my life doing a certain household appliance movie. Then I got caught up into the theme park. So 22 theme park attractions to date. The first one I had so much fun with, directing Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite. I got to let him improvise and do metamorphosis animation, and that led to him being cast as the genie. And a bunch of other characters. I directed Darth Vader and a bunch of other people along the way. But recently had so much fun as an executive R&D Imagineer doing a capable actor robot. So this is our little behavior bot character, and he could actually see and hear us and feel us. He loved being scratched. And then we did, Kiwi was a secret name for our bipedal robotics experiment. And it also was meant to be very expressive and emotive. So we had him do a casual stroll after Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. And we taught him how to be responsive, even though he didn't yet have a head or torso. And it was all about expressing emotion, so happy double bounce walk, sneakiness along the way. And sometimes we gave him a break from all that acting though, and let him just explore around the office. Sometimes he needed a little TLC after that. But the idea was to make him into an actor that could perform any character we want. So the first character we asked him to be was Baby Groot. So we taught him range of emotion, and we used augmented reality to teach him how to sense where we were, and then we unleashed him into the world. And then the next little piece I'm going to show you is actually accurately simulated to be acted by this.
For my ally is the force, and the powerful ally it is. Life breathes it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings tell me, not this crude matter. You must feel the force around you. It's really you, me, it's me. Around, everywhere. Yes, and even between the land and the ship.
So our group got a patent award for the capable actor robot. This earlier this year. The dream was, instead of creating a whole bunch of different bots for each character, to have one able to emote enough where you could tell it, I need you to be Baby Groot today, I need you to be Yoda today. And it could actually change the performance into what the character needs, put a different outfit on it. So.
John Van Vliet, 40 years, and I will say that John, in addition to being one of the guys that rode a motorcycle to work during TRON, he was known throughout the visual effects industry for his calendars. This is some of John Van Vliet's calendar art. People really look forward to this. It really captured the visual effects industry. John, what have you been up to for 40 years?
Hiding in plain sight.
This is John and his wife enjoying their retirement.
After TRON, I became one of what they call a migrant film worker. And I jumped around from project to project and specialized in visual effects. So it's, I think I got about 60 pictures under my belt. But, by the way, that's my wife where we got married. So, which one's your wife? Right, good. Not that one. This one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Make sure.
So after all the pictures, I finally decided to go and retire. I went out to Joshua Tree one night, and on the way back said, "Why are you coming back?" And so we moved there, and so I spent the next 9 years basically doing light painting, which was a lot of the techniques that I learned on TRON. So so that became like a real passion. Then I started building stuff, and so now I'm retired, but I'm building stuff out of found objects. I'm still out doing night photography and crawling around without adult supervision in the desert, and having a pretty good time. So this is one of the things that I've built. And so kinetics. So anyway, I'm out living in Arizona right now, and I'm participating in a community gallery, and we're having the time of our life.
Donald, life after TRON.
Well, before I get into what life is after TRON, I wanted to tell the audience what I think why TRON was one of the most influential films. The electronic world in TRON became the metaverse. Characters in the electronic world became avatars. In 1982, there was a guy called Hal Finney who worked on the TRON video game for Atari. Hal Finney became the first recipient of Bitcoin. So, TRON influenced him into the Bitcoin, and it's rumored that he's really Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the name behind Bitcoin, but you don't really know of that. The other thing is about TRON, it forecasted a Web3 open source community. In TRON, there was the personal computer versus the mainframe computer, and the personal computer won out. So that's the other thing, and obviously one of the main influences of TRON was also computer animation. So I think Disney's Pixar was born from the animation from this movie. And finally, the crypto currency, and there's a guy named William
Gibson. Yeah.
William Gibson who wrote Neuromancer, and that was the beginning of the cyberpunk revolution. So, having all said that, I have a little clip of what my next project is. It's basically a metaverse project where dinosaurs get reimagined and come back in the near and the not too distant future to help mankind get along with itself and to help mankind get along with planet Earth. You want to run that?
Yeah, teaser, I think.
In the next reel, we're going to show about 10 seconds of what's called a non-fungible token, which you're going to be the first audience to see it, and we're going to give it away free for everyone in the audience. And NFT is more like a collectible.
So this is the first collectible from your next project, Cryptosaurs.
Yes, it's called Cryptosaurs.
So this is the collectible. So are those eggs going to hatch?
Yes, we shall see. Okay.
All right, so
And if you scan this barcode, you'll get a free NFT.
So this will take you to the website, I think Don said,
Yes.
and you'll be able to access that first collectible from Donald's new project. So with that, the reason we're here, I'll turn it over to Justin, and we'll have a conversation about what happened 40 years ago and how this film came about. So,
All right, let's talk Tron.
all right.
So my first question is for Donald. And if you think about Disney in the late 70s and early 80s, they were making endless done-not sequels and a lot of, traditionally animated films. How did you convince the Disney executives at that time to come up with something so extraordinary and so groundbreaking with all this technology that went into Tron?
I think Disney had just made the movie Black Hole, which was more of a traditional kind of movie. And I think they had a new executive there called Tom Wilhite, and he was just open. We went and we had pitched one other studio who was interested, and then we pitched to Tom Wilhite, and he kind of bought it right in the room. It was kind of just what he was looking for.
Let's tell them about today.
Yeah, we had developed the storyboards, we had the effects animation and computer animation, and we had developed the script, and so we had a whole package ready to go.
And this is Jerry with one of the first tests. So there was a lot of proving that had to go on inside of Disney. So helmet tests, 20 seconds of backlit animation, examples of CG, but that was the buy-in, right?
Yes.
This is a shot of John Shealy, who's somewhere in the audience and was a visual effects supervisor on me outside of the building in Culver City where Flynn's Arcade was actually set. And there's a design or marketing company in back that obviously loves the film because they have this awning. So we took that, but raises the question about Flynn himself, right?
Yeah, so before Flynn, before he was even the dude that we all know and love today, Donald, tell us how you ended up casting Jeff Bridges.
Well, we ended up casting him because he was our first choice, and I think he had just done the Last Picture Show, which is before that, and so we liked him out of that. And I know I used to watch him as a kid on TV with his father
Seaman.
So he's been an actor since he was 5 years old. And it turns out we had the same agent at the time when we sold it to Disney. Jeff Berg at ICM represented him, and he represented us. And I also think Jeff consulted the I Ching. He was into that at the time. So we probably, that was.
I remember there were a lot of senior Disney executives that when you decided how, he decided how. It was, and then this was part of Jeff's thing, right, Jerry?
Yes, we had the arcade version of the
Battle Zone.
Battle Zone on the set, and Bill Croyer and I would jump over and try to beat each other with high score, and Jeff invariably between shots would run over, hop in, and beat us.
He called it getting in the zone. So before he would do a scene on the set, he would be locked into this arcade game, and sometimes would hold up production because he wasn't in the zone yet. But this was the game.
And we kept giving him the challenge, and he kept beating us.
Yeah, he was great at it. He was a natural. John, you know about this? This is a Jeff photograph, right? With the wide lux, is that right?
Yeah, this is one of Jeff's stage photographs. He took them of all the productions he worked on, and this was what it was like for us.
So this is when Jeff would take these wide-angle pictures, and so that's Richard Taylor, visual effects supervisor with Harrison Onshaw. Stephen Lisberg, that's John. He no longer has black hair, but still has hair. And Harrison Onshaw on the right. This is, so Justin has a question about this, but I'll identify the people. So that's Donald, Stephen Lisberger, Sid Mead, Mobius, and Peter Lloyd. I don't know the gentleman in the back, but these were the visionaries for the film, right?
And I guess my question here is, you have all these visionaries and they're creating this amazing art. How do you translate that into sets and costumes and wardrobe and everything else?
That was the killer. When I first got recruited on this, I had talked to Richard Taylor, and I had been up north at the place where they do those Star Wars things. And I got this guy on the phone, Richard Taylor, and he said, yeah, why don't you come down and take a look at this? And I got off the phone and I realized, this is the guy who did the 7-Up commercials. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but when I was a very young person, it was some of the most amazing, wonderful, psychedelic animation I've ever seen in my life. So anyway, I got all excited because it's Richard Taylor. And I fly down here and I show him some stuff, and then he takes me into a room where all the concept art that these guys have created is on the wall. And I walk in there, and it's probably the closest thing I've ever had to a religious experience. And I was like, okay, how much is he going to charge me to work on the picture, or who do I have to kill? And nobody got killed, and they ended up paying me, and it worked out well for me.
And Jerry, you had an interesting, first experience.
Oh yeah, I was dying to get on the TRON. We were between pictures, and I was so curious, and I went up and they graciously said, yeah, you're game to join us. Come on in. I was the only Disney character animator that was jumping in. But I couldn't find a spot to sit down and start working, and Mobius says, put up a chair. And I said, really? So he gave me a chair at his desk, and we drew across from each other, facing each other for a number of weeks before he was done. And I kept covering my drawings while he was doing beautiful, beautiful pieces. But he taught us how to use Pentel markers to blend things, and just really was very gracious.
I'm going to take somewhat ashamedly credit for staging the cheesiest picture in the history of pictures. So that's Bill Croyer on the left, Jerry on the right, in the computer animation trailer. So
With the modem receiving the signal.
yeah, like 1 pixel at a time.
Yes, they could not move, they were just stills.
So Jerry, how did you this was pioneering for computer graphics and that kind of imagery. How did you tell a story with that?
Well, it was interesting because we were trained for that, oddly enough, in the Disney character animation department, because none of that happens automatically. It's crafted frame by frame, and you're trying to achieve the illusion of life, but you do that one frame at a time. And TRON had to be created one frame at a time. They could render an object and make it seem lit, but there was no animation software to make it move anywhere. So we had to park it somewhere for every single frame. So we'd start with storyboards. This was a shot that I planned out with the recognizer chasing the cycle. I did that with pencil and ruler and marker, mapping out exactly where it would go. Then I had to think, well, how do I get the person to pose it? So I would do elevation, and I would map out per second the path of the recognizers, for example, and then elevation looking down at the angle of its descent. And so I had to also think about where the camera was moving. And then things like tilting of it. That's not a spline tool in the computer. That was just me drawing what my expectation would be for the slow ins and slow outs to look organic. We were used to doing that in the drawn animation of Disney, timing things. So, but that all turned into math. Those all turned into math.
Turned into this.
And then went into those, and then got rendered together, and it was just a screen cap. Rebound at the end, and sorry for the Daft Punk instead of the original score, but that little
TRON joke, they get it.
Yeah, a little magnetic pulse between the two. There was no algorithm to do that. I just went downstairs to a downshooter video camera that I used when I was doing animation for Disney, and just did stop motion of the movement until it looked right to me, and then took the map numbers back up to the computer guys, and they parked the recognizers at the address for everything. Wow. Yeah. Stop motion computer animation.
Yes. So, my next question is for John. You know, what did your friends in the visual effects industry think about TRON?
They greeted it with curiosity and terror. Because up to this point, everything when you were working in visual effects was basically that you had just invested in a very large computer-controlled motion control system, which is now pretty much not happening. So we've got a lot of time and money invested in setting those things up. You've got people invested in programming and running these things, and then you've got this huge optical department with a learning curve is pretty amazing. So they're all looking at that going, if this happens, we're all out of a job. And they were rightfully concerned, because that's sort of happened. But at the same time, all the people on the creative end of it were all like sort of come in and go, what do you got? And I would get visitors to my little, hole, and these people would come in and ask a lot of questions, and it was like, and they were sort of disappointed because I'm not actually doing the computer stuff. That's him. I'm just faking it. And but they were really intrigued, and we've seen where it's going in a very short amount of time. So it was an interesting transition. We called it the big tsunami when it hit.
We saw that push button, a cartoon that John drew. I think a lot of people in the visual effects industry thought that's how it worked, right? It
was like there's
box.
a dinosaur button, there's a wire removal button, and it's all magic, and it's one little box, and you just pay a lot of money for the box, and everybody looks happy with it.
Which is how it works today. Okay, so this is a storyboard. This is Jerry on the left, right, and then John, and once the film is processed.
It was so fun boarding. I was so proud of Flynn and Yori kissing in front of the beam, staging it so that would happen.
And this is another unsung hero. Glenn, are you out there? Glenn Campbell? I thought he was going to be here. So, effects camera person, Glenn Campbell. You want to say a little bit about him, John?
Glenn was the alpha camera guy, and we had camera operators and what we call cranes all over town. But Glenn was this lunatic who lived down on Crane 8, and I always had these hideously complex shots. And back in the day when we were doing this, it wasn't just shoot a picture, move forward to the next frame of art. And a lot of them, especially if you see like the motorcycle res-ups and stuff, I would be doing what they call multi-pass, which basically means you'd run a bunch of artwork and then you'd wind the camera or the film back on the camera. And a lot of them, we actually wound them back over 70 times. And we were actually in danger of wearing the perfs out. And I would go down to the camera department with these huge piles of art, sometimes on a cart, and most of the guys would hide. And they said, go talk to Glenn. And I'd bring it into Glenn, and he'd be like, oh, goody, what do you got? What do you got? And so Glenn and I became a real team, and he was the man who made it happen for him. Almost every single complicated shot we did in the picture went through Glenn. We remain good friends to this day, and he still says I owe him.
And he directs Sharknado movies too. Could not be prouder. This combines a lot of the effects of it's a Jerry storyboard. Jerry, you want to talk about it?
And Steven just asked me what would it be like for Flynn to travel into the system. So I just did pastels. I had studied Fortran and Fantasia, and so this was kind of my contribution.
Well, this
It was an early stab at what it might be like.
This combines classical and cutting edge, right? Flynn's getting sad.
So yes, black paper and colored pencils, but trying to imagine computer graphics, which it became.
So I think this slide brings us to, one of the greats who we lost just a few weeks ago, David Warner. Round of applause. All of your takes on working with him and what it was like having him on this film.
Well, the first shot, the first day, took place on the bridge of the aircraft carrier, and it was all black in front of him and there's all black in back of him. And he had read this script and he thought he was going to be on some physical bridge where there was going to be like a real aircraft carrier. And so he didn't really understand. He said, well, what's behind me? What's in front of me? So I think everyone had to talk him through of what was in front that was all black velvet and back was black velvet. And we were going to put in the scenes afterwards. And he got into it after a while, but he was expecting the bridge of an aircraft carrier.
So if you ever see this expression on anyone's face, that's the expression of somebody that doesn't have a clue what they're looking at.
All right, so the film came out in 1982. Tell us a little bit about the reception you got from critics and audiences and fans.
Well, I think as they say in the industry, Tron had legs, because 20 some odd years later, there was Tron Legacy, there's an animated cartoon on Tron, and there's an amusement park, there's two amusement park rides, one that's
Theme
over
park.
at China.
We call it theme park.
Theme park. So it had a lot of legs and it had given birth to a lot of things. I talked about how it foretold the metaverse and open source communication and computer animation. So, that's my feeling about it.
Jerry, John, what do you remember that?
I think there was a big misunderstanding at the time from the visual effects industry about how it was even made, though. Right?
Yeah, they were so convinced that much of this went through the computer, and it was, what was it, actually 15 minutes of computer animation?
Something like that.
Something like that. So I kept running into people going, okay, so you pushed all this stuff through the computer. And I go, no, it was done traditional, by hand, and they were like, I wasn't. And I said, how do you argue with that? It's like, and they go, no, we hand drew all this stuff. And they go, no, you didn't. And for the longest time, because some of the stuff we hand animated looked pretty complicated stuff, and everybody just figured that's what computers can do, and no, they couldn't.
And then for the that we're doing, Donald's right that John Lasseter came in and was very curious to see what we were up to. So that spark was being born, where he was starting to envision what it could be. And my friends back in the animation department were very concerned about what I was up to. It was sort of like computers, push button art, and I was so passionately saying what Donald's saying, that this is a new canvas for us as artists to use. Pixels will become performance if we make it so.
So, I used to own that cane. I kept that cane, and Walter Cronkite signed it and dated it, and I lost that cane. I'm still, someone, one of you has it, I know that. Annie Leibovitz shot this cover, and they would not make Jeff glow. We had to negotiate, and she refused to let her photography get tampered with. So they glowed the masthead and the subhead, but would not let us glow up Jeff. That was big to do. And then we had these covers, which was unheard of in those days. We had them. We actually flew them to New York with Richard Taylor and John Shealy, did all this compositing, and 2 days before the magazine went to print, Alexander Haig resigned as Secretary of State. Who remembers Alexander Haig? Well, he cost us these covers, so I remember it bitterly.
Well, this brings me to my last question, which is for all of you. We've seen a little bit about what you've been up to for the last 4 years, but how do you think TRON changed your life?
I finally realized, yes, you can make a living making art. So the fact that I'm still out in the middle of nowhere painting with light, it's sort of a weird disease. You get it and you don't stop. So that was a game changer for me.
For me, it was a beacon of life to go down the path less traveled. And so that's what I've been doing my whole life.
And, it made me addicted to things that are digital and analog combinations. I did a trip to Dubai in 2007 and two of the other Emirates to pitch a city called Infinity City. That would have been the first physical and virtual building maximum interface capabilities and infinite amount of population, because parts virtually tapped in, parts physical, and I still believe in all of that, and it's coming to pass, but I never would have been part of going out and doing early pitches for that without TRON changing all our minds.
It's very kind of you.
You heard John use the word game changer, so I wrote the book Game Changers. TRON really was the impetus for that. When we made the film, and really these gentlemen made the film, it attracted everyone in the world at that time that was interested in using computers for the arts. And it was about that passion that Stephen and Donald and the filmmakers shared. And I have been espousing that type of innovation really for the past 40 years and wrote a book about it. It is still, for me, the epitome of what innovation is like, what it's like to be part of it. And it really was an amazing experience for all of us.
Well, that brings us to the end of our questions. Can we give everybody a round of applause?